Good afternoon and welcome to a Celtic State of Mind. It's Thursday and I'm clearly not Paul John Dykes. And I appreciate me coming in is a bit like substituting Lionel Messi for Edson Braithwaite, but nonetheless, here I am, and I'll be ably supported by Quinny today. Welcome to the show, mate. Thanks for coming on. Nice to have you.
Pleasure.
As many of you will know, Paul John is currently on his way travelling to the Big Smoke. He's attending the Football Content Awards, where he's representing not only just Acsom as a channel, but also himself as a content creator. And everyone here at the team, and I'm sure all of you guys are keeping our fingers crossed that he gets the win tonight. But hopefully he'll have a good time regardless. And it's good validation of the show that we get these nominations. And it's, I think, Quinn, it's recognition of a lot of the hard work that people like Paul John and indeed people like yourself put into trying to provide Celtic content, and people like myself are just lucky to be kind of part of it. Lots to discuss today. We're over the big hump, which is Wednesday, so now we're closer to Celtic playing again this Saturday night, albeit a little later than many of us would have liked, particularly those who are travelling to the game. Looking forward to seeing Celtic back in action this weekend, Quinny. As you can see, me and Quinny are matching today. We were both horrendously offended that Paul John recommended Lawrence to be the model, the Acsom model for the new release of the tribute Bumblebee kit. And especially when he mentioned double denim, I don't know about you, Quinny, I just thought I'm not having that. So this is my edition. Quinny's joined in. We don't want any nicknames, all right? Don't want to hear, the Quinny told me not to mention this, but we don't want to be the Bumblebee twins, okay, before you guys start. Know what you like. But yeah, that's why we're matching today. So it's a Bumblebee edition of Celtic State of Mind. Quinny, on to the match this weekend. Great to see Celtic back. International breaks are always really tough. I think a lot of people have mentioned that. We're up against Hearts, who are usually one of the teams that we generally enjoy beating because they tend to be called the mini Rangers a lot of the time. But yeah, we do enjoy getting a result against them. It's always difficult to carry momentum in after you've had such a long break. We've also had a couple of our guys travelling far afield, easy for me to say, travelling far afield, such as our Japanese players, who all of whom were called up to the squad, although at very limited minutes. But that can have an effect on the legs, with the travelling. Even I'm sure the relative luxury that they're travelling in. What's your thoughts for the game? Do you see any major changes in lineup, and how do you think they'll approach the match?
So this is actually a funny one to get set for because, like we've all been kind of echoing, this is the big period of fixtures. I won't say the buzzword of the moment, but and you can't take any game for granted, especially this one. Like the record there isn't exactly spotless. Over the last couple of visits. And it's so that there's a tightrope to be walked of. Is it absolute best 11? It just goes out from the beginning here, or is there a bit of jet lag to manage? Is there a bit of upcoming midweek to think about, and then the following weekend to work into that as well somehow? Because it is going to be constant, like over December through January until like the 14th. There's like between two. It's the longest break we get now between two fixtures. It's like the 14th of January to the 22nd of January. It's not much, of course, but between now and then, essentially, it's like 2 games a week all the way through. So it's a tough one to think about coming into it in terms of going about winning the match and what approach the manager will take.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it'll be interesting. I mean, the one thing we always talk about is the fact that we seem to have more quality in depth now. There's been a clamouring to see players like Luke McCowan maybe come in and get some minutes and get the chance to try and establish himself as certainly a rotational member of that midfield. We've obviously got players like Bernardo. I think, am I right in saying he was away? Was he away in under 21 duty? I think even though he's aged out, he'd started the tournament, so I think he continued. But it'd be great to see, maybe some of the squad being utilised. Obviously, we're hoping Kuhn comes back and continues his great form. I mean, he's been an absolute superstar. And in the spirit of obviously us wearing the Bumblebee and me wearing the Bumblebee with the denim jacket, there's been a lot of comparison and continuing comparison between what Nicholas Kuhn is doing and what we got from Jota. There was so much affection for a player like Jota. Kuhn seems to be a bit less, he's more understated in terms of the way he plays and certainly his profile at the moment. But he's starting to turn quite a lot of heads. A lot of people are now starting to say, well, he's producing as much as, if not more than what Jota gave us, albeit in a shorter space of time at the moment. What's your thoughts at the moment? Have we fully exercised the loss of such a player in Jota now?
I do think so. Like Jota for me was fantastic, but he was absolute flair. Like that was his game, that was his bag, that's what he was all about. And although Kuhn has like a very similar, if not same or better level of flair, he's also like just a very effective like team player as well. He's always in the right position to like receive the ball. He wins the ball back as well, which is why like Germany will be having a look at him. We heard Nagelsmann dropping some quotes, name dropping him, ahead of World Cup qualifying, which will start in March or whatever. And you know, for that kind of Kuhn gives you just way more. He's just a far more effective player, even if his numbers are brilliant. So we've not really seen a game where he's not actually done something in it. But if there is a game where he won't actually get a goal or get an assist or whatever, he'll still come out of it if he performs the way he has been with, aplomb, because he'll still be, creating chances, taking people on, winning the ball back, and doing all the other stuff he's doing outside of the big statistics of goals and assists. So I think, firmly, in terms of the role or the zeitgeist or whatever, it's definitely fulfilled at this point, I think, if he keeps up.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that one of the things that's important for me is when you do hear a player like Kuhn, he's getting mentioned by the international manager. We're seeing our Japanese players, albeit there's frustration at the distance they have to travel, but they are getting the opportunity to go and be part of the squad. So being at Celtic has often been one of the sticks that's used to beat some Celtic players over is, you need to move to advance your international career. I think now we're starting to see, international managers are recognising that playing at Celtic, particularly with European football and the level we're playing at, it's no longer a barrier to breaking into the international team. We've still seen some elements of it. I think, Matt O'Reilly, it was a little bit of a consideration for him at times. But, being able to see a number of players getting called up to the international team or getting mentioned or linked to the international team because of their performances with our club is great. And hopefully that removes a barrier to start signing players of this kind of requisite level of quality that we need. And on that, when we're talking about recruitment, we are getting closer to the January recruitment. We've also got the AGM coming up on Friday. AGM, people have mixed opinions on it. Is it just a chance for shareholders to pat themselves on the back and the board to pat themselves on the back and say, look at us, how well we are? But what I think a lot of people would like to see at the AGM is a bit of a statement of intent from the manager, backed by the board. We saw some really promising stuff in the summer window with the money spent on Engels, the money spent on Ida in particular. We've started to see players getting rewarded with contracts, which is great. We retained a couple of good players, made some great profit on players such as Matt O'Reilly, etc. We need to continue that, right? It's not just about momentum on the field. We need to actually continue this momentum as trying to build our ambition as a club. You see, hopefully, that coming from the AGM, or are we just going to use it as an opportunity to say, hey, look at us, we're not Rangers. We are, we're operating brilliant financially, and, congratulations, everybody. Well, as supporters, we need more than that, don't we?
Oh yeah, for sure. I think there'll be a good appetite for getting some tangibles out of this because of the appointment of Tisdale as well coming into the building over the last month or so. There's obviously already, because previously I think one of the main aggravations we've all had with the bank balance and the lack of transfer activity is that they hold out the facilities that they're building or have built, and that's all now been done. So you can't spend that money twice. It's been spent, it's happening, and we've seen all the stuff you've just mentioned there, of course, and with the international scene, Engels playing 2 games in a row for Belgium, although not great results, losing 1-0 to Italy and Israel respectively each. But with this new Champions League format, it is a new world quite quickly. If we've got these players, not want to jinx anything and not want to speak ahead of time, but let's imagine we end up actually playing 10 Champions League games this season. It's quite feasible at this point. Fast forward even in 2 or 3 seasons from now, once this format is a lot better established, not just us, but so many other teams that have been previously overlooked or underrated will have talent that now shines out and now gets some recognition. So being a regular Champions League team is going to mean what we've always kind of wanted it to mean, and it's just going to be a lot better for integrating us into the European market and international football, and the top prospects seeing the potential of coming here and where it can take them. Because Arne Engels, I know he's obviously not kicked a ball really for Celtic at the same time, but he never got his Belgium cap until he had signed for us. So it's those kind of optics, if you like, that help kind of paint the picture for and Kuhn underlines that, of course, is kind of on top of that. But I think the club we're frustrated before that we didn't capitalise from a position of strength, and it feels like now like there really is no other option than to keep going and keep on, capitalising on the position we're in. It's unavoidable now. Like everything else has been, it feels like done. Big bank balance, check. Facilities, check. So now
Absolutely.
it's time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not often the stars seem to align for our club or indeed Scottish football at all. But I think you're right. This new format, I mean, it's unusual that a straight, a change of structure to a competition, particularly such a major competition, actually kind of works in our favour. But it really is at the moment, and we seem to be reaping the rewards. And not that they should need it, but you'd hope that the fact that there is this level of exposure, certainly optically, as you said, in the Champions League, it incentivises our top players to actually go and show what they can do on that stage. And I think the recognition that the team's had for some of our results, Atalanta, etc., and going forward has been exceptional. So it's fantastic to see. We are up to, where are we? We're over 500 strong at the moment. We usually get over 1,000 as we go through. I'm going to bring up some of the comments just now. So unusually for a day, Jungle Line did not make it in first. It was actually the Pork Chop Express, which is a reference I love. I don't know about you, Quinny, but I love this because that is my favourite 80s film, which is Big Trouble in Little China and the Pork Chop Express. So it's my absolute favourite handle in there. So when I saw that coming up, I had to bring it up. So hail to you, Pork Chop. Everything's well indeed. Hope all's well with you too. You talk about getting in early. Writing this at 9:30 a.m. It's the only way to get in a for Jungle Line and Paddy Lavery. And you absolutely did make it. Jungle did come in second though. Let's hope Acsom gets their due at the awards. Absolutely. And look, I appreciate that I'm, not a tenured content creator. I've not been part of the channel for a huge amount of time. Very lucky to have this opportunity. But I see on a day-to-day basis the amount of work and sacrifice actually that Paul John and a lot of the guys in the team, Kev Graham, etc., put into the being able to deliver this product. And really, it's not restricted just to Acsom. Quinny, yourself, about the challenges in content creation, trying to get established and trying to get that recognition and that following. So there's a lot of work involved and a lot of moving parts which I wasn't aware of. So yeah, really hope that Paul John and the guys get the nod tonight. But I think just being there as consistently as I've been over the last few years is validation that we're doing something right. And certainly all the support from you guys is massively appreciated. The other suspect, Paddy Lavery, comes in, loved the new Christmas advert, absolutely class. I think it dropped about half an hour ago, Quinny, so I've not seen it yet, but I can see a few people shedding a few tears in the comments, so it must be a good one. Maybe we'll rival the old M&S adverts that they used to do at Christmas, which were always the tear jerkers, so we might see a few good ones. Urban Culture comes in. As you can see, I've not banned you today, so hopefully that puts that to bed. But good day to all fellow Acsom addicts. Life is good when you have a supply of square sausages. Amen, brother. Absolutely love that. Or rolling slices, I think Paul John calls it. For me, it was always a square sausage. I can't get this slice thing in my head, yeah. Jim Conlon comes in. Hail, boys and girls. Absolutely. Mark Anthony Smith, afternoon, everyone. Kevin Mullen talking about the game. Afternoon Acsom, buzzing for the game on Saturday night. Early goal against the Jam Tarts and they will fold. I think so. Hopefully we go high intensity in the game. Maybe try and get a few early goals and really put them under the caution. Then you've got the option of, do you start to rest players? Do you start to bring players off and bring in other guys to get some minutes? So yeah, a good start would be ideal. And Urban Culture comes back in 2 games a week time coming up, and I love it. James Devine reflects on our comments earlier. I hope all our international players haven't picked up an injury. I've not heard of any injuries so far, Quinny. I don't know if you have. I've not heard of anyone picking up knocks, so fingers crossed. AR comes in. Is that a Bumblebee with a denim jacket? Jota Mark II. As much as I would love to be Jota Mark II, I don't think I've got the hair, the tan, the charisma, the physique, the money, or the flair, as Quinny alluded to earlier. But as a denim jacket and a Bumblebee top, so what is that? 2 out of 10 ain't bad. Big Red's come in with a nickname for us, a pair of honeybees. How about that? A pair of honeybees. I like that. A pair of honeys. I'll take that. That's better than a Bumblebee twins. I'll take that one.
I've seen double Bumblebee. I thought that was a good one.
Double Bumblebee. That's quite good. I like that. Big Red comes in. I think Bernie scored for Portugal. Brilliant. Great to see, even on the youth stage. Great to see that he's doing that. And I think it's something I want to see more from Bernardo is doing more. Just getting in and around the goals a wee bit more, because we know he's capable. And these ones are just for an Alexander Hind comes in. Hind, I think it's Hind. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. It's warm here in Tenerife. And Stuart's got my response to that. Alexander Hyde, I hope Double Denim gives you time out for that posting. That, yeah, absolutely. The moment, all I can see is frost on the rooftops. So thanks for that. And then last one for now. Flinch comes back in. Is it double denim or single denim today? I'm not going to stand up and show you my lower half, but it is double denim. Okay, so just I won't prove that because that can lead to various censorship. So thanks, guys, for the comments. There's a couple of other topics been doing the rounds this week, Quinny, and I'm glad to have you on because you can talk from a real position of subject matter knowledge on this, and you're very much on the inside. Paul John and young Patrick mentioned it yesterday, but it's essentially the plight of one of our I guess you could almost call them heritage teams in Dumbarton, who, like Inverness Cali Thistle, were facing some real financial struggles at the moment, and could possibly face some severe sanctions. And we never want to see anything that damages Scottish football, or by extension our club. But I think in this case, the danger is that a lot of Scottish clubs, through either bad management, a lack of support from the association, and various factors, are starting to have a real impact on not only clubs and the well-being, but the well-being of everyone associated to the club as well, from every position. Quinny, you're doing a lot of work just now on Dumbarton, so I don't want to steal your thunder here. So if you can maybe just give us a bit of an overview of what you're involved in just now in supporting Dumbarton, and let people know how they can maybe step in and help out.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of formalising a consortium to make an effort to try and buy the club through the administration process. So that's kind of my angle of approach on all of this. But Dumbarton is ultimately, like I think I mentioned when you first had me on here, and by the way, huge luck tonight, fingers crossed for Paul John and everyone, of course. The Celtic Acsom support always seem to vote very well. Obviously, multiple award winning as it is, and I'm sure it'll be another good night for the boys in green again, as it were. But yeah, I'm from Dumbarton myself. Like, I've born and raised in the place, and it's always been my kind of like pipe dream fantasy. Like, if you could do absolutely anything, what would it do? And it would be making that club its full potential. And really, where it sits right now is the absolute opposite of that. It is like, on the brink of going. There's a SOS fund at the moment, Save Our Sons, a GoFundMe page that's been set up through the club to raise £50,000, and that's to cover operating costs, which it's all detailed on the website. I can't really comment too much because it's obviously this is a public thing. I don't want to be like rude or cheeky or speak out of turn or whatever, but everything is quite public. And the thing with this situation is it's not really that the club has got massive expenses and can't pay its bills. It can't not pay its bills, of course. That's why it's got a GoFundMe thing, but it's more of it's maybe, it's not like they've signed hundreds of players, the wages are through the roof and they've not getting it's not that kind of situation. The administrators at the moment are in the process of doing an investigation into a land sale to see like the actual situation around money that's owed to the club through that. And again, I've had a lot of, since if you find me on Twitter at Quinny3001, I've made some posts about where I'm at, what my intentions are, and as well as a post from Kieran Maguire, which is just a really handy post because all the accounts are public. I actually, some of you guys will know I'm involved in like a fantasy football game as well. And like in 2001, I was doing like very like super well with that. And some of you might know, cryptocurrency was doing pretty well back then. And even back then, I didn't do anything about it at the time, but I requested the club's books. You can go and see this stuff on Company's House, and the club has always been kind of in this shape of it's a small club. It doesn't make much money, but it doesn't really spend that much money either. And it's just kind of living in obscurity, as it were, at the moment. And for me, like, being from Dumbarton, and I just know the area. I just know the appetite for football in the area as well. I'm also a UEFA B licensed coach, which maybe not everyone kind of knows. I've not coached since the virus and all that kind of caper, but I've got experience in part-time football to an extent, so I understand the challenges that brings. And I'm a very football focused person. It's basically the centre of everything I do now. It's been a huge kind of drive in my life over the last like 12 years or whatever. Is getting as far into football as I possibly could in any way, shape or form. So I've got a lot of good plans, a lot of good processes to go through. Sorry about golf.
Yep. No, it's all right. You're getting a bit of love in the comments as well. So a lot of people willing to help out. And I think it's important to, I think, Quinny, if people do want to get involved, they can obviously contact you on X or Twitter, although it seems to be a big migration through X and Twitter at the moment. So we're going to the bizarrely named Blue Sky just now. By the way, there is a genuine Acsom account up there now. We've had a couple of imposters, impersonators, and infiltrators. However, if anyone follows me on Blue Sky, you'll get the link to the official Acsom account on Blue Sky now, and hopefully, Quinny, we can start promoting the work you're doing on there as well. But yeah, what kind of support would you be looking for from people if they could get involved? What's even beyond just the sharing of the play at the club?
Well, as I say, if anyone's just interested in just the preservation of the club or whatever, and don't really want to go too much further beyond that, like the GoFundMe thing that the club is running is definitely something to look at and support if possible, of course. But like I said earlier, like my individual interest is trying to raise like a investor consortium, of which is in the process of being like fully formalized over the next couple of days, in an effort to buy the club and take it from where it is and try and help it fulfill its potential. And like with my experience in like coaching, like number one, like I know how amazing there are so many coaches in this country that are amazing coaches. Like there really is. Like it's one of our, in Scotland, period, it's one of our great natural resources is the love of football, and that really does show itself, I think, in coaching. And we're starting to see a bit of a renaissance of Scottish youth football again. We're actually getting players that are playing. Like we've got 3 players in Italy right now, that are first team players at top teams, Champions Leagues, and all the rest of it. So, like it's the club will be all about like. I don't want to outwardly say it's a community-based thing. That can happen with this. I'm not closed off to anything, but I'm just not fully aware of all the parameters of what that would mean to say that and what needs to happen and all the rest of it. So I don't want to speak out of turn or lead anyone in the false direction or whatever. But the main focus and the main agenda of the club will be like enhancing and maximising all of its local resources and everything it does really have at its disposal. And really like, as I say, like I think with organisation, like Scottish football's got way more potential at all levels, as from a league standpoint, the national team, even down to local clubs like mine. That and just for a bit of background as well, like I grew up in Silverton. If anyone's from Dumbarton, will know where that is, and that is in the shadow of Boghead. I remember the last game at Boghead. I remember jumping over the fence at Boghead, and everyone taking pieces of turf home, after the game and all the rest of it. I actually forget what the game was because I wasn't at it, but we all kind of jumped the ball afterwards, and it was a bit of it was scenes, as it were. The Cruyff story that I mentioned yesterday is like a bedtime story in Dumbarton, or it used to be when I was young anyway. And the new stadium down at the castle, I live next to that.
One's a hard one to believe. It's unreal, the Cruyff story, If anyone isn't aware of that, look it up. It's absolutely brilliant.
I didn't fully believe it until like the internet era confirmed it, if you know what I mean. Like I was just thought it was just like one of these rumors that got arms and legs and became like urban myth, But I definitely didn't believe it until I seen internet proof, as it were. But then I through my high school years, I lived right next to Dumbarton Castle as well, and I've spoke about before that I used to, I would always be in and around the stadium. Like they used to have a lot of reserve matches there and like youth international games there when it first opened. And if you showed up at half time, the guys always just let you in for nothing. So, maybe there's some missed revenue there for the club.
I was going to say maybe that contributed to the play, but at the same time, that's one of those good kind of feel good old football stories. It's like getting lifted over the fence or getting let in as a kid and seeing that. And I think that's part of what you want to you want to retain the spirit of that, well, not obviously putting the club in financial jeopardy there. Yeah.
And although I don't want to hang myself out here as saying like, oh, I went to every game and I'm a season ticket holder or I know everything about the club right now and I'm a right boffin about it. I'm not, but I'm very much like in love with the club in that regard. It's very much my hometown team, as it were. And I've only got the best intentions for it. And, like I said to you before coming on, like it's getting quite real quite quickly, it was just something that was started off as let's have a shot, it's possible, that some of the funding's there to make this happen, and can we get the rest of it? And again, a part of it, the administrator needs to do some work. We have no idea at this point really what the value of the club is, what the bid would need to be, and all that kind of stuff. So there's still very, very early stages, but as I say, I'll be making everything known as it happens, and any support in terms of shares and retweets and all that good stuff, of course, is always appreciated. And as anything formalizes, anyone that's interested, because that's one thing I was going to say, because of all the stuff I've been involved in, from coaching, content creation, like all this other kind of fantasy football stuff or whatever. Not to blow my own trumpet or anything, but I know a lot of people in some really cool places that do some really cool jobs that have messaged me about this and not only like want to throw some money at it, but also want to get their hands dirty to some extent.
Yeah.
So like that's why I'm starting to get like extra kind of excited, and like I can't really keep myself straight as I'm talking about it because it still feels so surreal. But like if everything fell into place, it's not just potentially like a consortium coming in to save the club and all that kind of stuff and help it fulfill its potential, but it's potentially like you know, I was talking about this on my own channel yesterday. I would never want to use the term sleeping giant because it is Dumbarton, it's not Glasgow or Edinburgh or something like that, you know. But you know, there's a lot of underlying potential there. It's just, it could be a big small club very easily, you know. That's the way I kind of think of it, you know. So with a lot of hard work and people with their heart in the right place, like that's the kind of vibe we've got with the idea of the consortium and who will be involved.
Fantastic. Well, listen, we wish you, obviously, the whole Acsom team wishes you every luck and success with it. I'm sure, you know, I'm seeing a lot of comments as well, people talking about Dumbarton and what it means. And it's obviously the Celtic affiliation there as well. I think, is it Sean Fallon? Is that right in saying, was it Sean Fallon? It was affiliated. And was Murdo McLeod, actually, if I remember right, was also affiliated with it as well. So, you know, there is a bit of a Celtic link there. But I can't think of anything more that exemplifies it, as Paul John likes to often quote, a Celtic state of mind than kind of hometown boy, you know, trying to save the hometown club. So yeah, absolutely wish you all the best of luck. If everyone is watching, if you're interested in contributing, please reach out to Quinny directly. But I appreciate, even if you can just share it far and wide and make people aware, then that's we couldn't ask any more than that. So thank you everyone for listening, and thanks Quinny for letting us know how it's going, and hopefully we'll get an update from you in over the course of the next few weeks, which would be great. Okay, jumping back to Celtic then, as we are the Celtic State of Mind. We've got the game out obviously at the weekend, and Quinny, you touched on it. We've got quite a congested fixture list coming up, both with domestic and European football. One night that we're going to have, which I think you're attending actually, which is on, is it what day is it? It's the 10th, isn't it? 10th of December?
I want to say the 10th, yeah.
It's the 10th, and this is a Champions League match against Dynamo Zagreb, which Acsom will be hosting at the Barazat Design. And Quinny, you're going to be joined by Paul John, Kev Graham, Acsom, and Tino from the Celtic Exchange, I think, as well. I might pop along just to show face and watch a game with the guys. But if anyone comes along, there's going to be music, there's analysis which features Jackie McNamara. It's free entry, and you'll be entitled to a halftime pie. See if we can outfox the Kelly pies by doing Acsom pies. Might be our bad pies, who knows? But yeah, it'd be great if you could join us, and that's, as I say, that's on the 10th of December. And Paddy Lavery was giving me any trouble for checking my phone just so I could validate the date. So yes, Paddy, I was using my phone at work, as we call it, but it was for work purposes. So there, don't make me ban you. Getting back to Celtic, we do have a congested fixture list. The game against Hearts, hopefully, we'll get an early goal, which will give us momentum and allow us to see that through. But then we're into midweek games, Quinny. It's going to be a real challenge and a test on the manager, certainly ahead of the recruitment window in January, to try and get the best out of the squad and keep us fresh, particularly when we're coming off this international break where we've had a lot of guys travelling far afield. How do you think he'll approach the fixtures themselves? Could you see him rotating it domestically, and where do you think he'll prioritise?
I think you've got to look at really the next 3 games as being like a block, I think, in terms of just trying to attack them and get 3 wins on the bounce. And I think really like the squad really couldn't be in better shape in so many ways. Like we've mentioned some of the stuff about the international kind of acclaim, you know, Bernardo's goal, Engel's getting 2 caps and whatever. So there's a lot of players that have been travelling. Kyogo got some minutes, Hatate got some minutes, you know. It's not unusual to travel and get no minutes, you know. So
yeah, exactly. Which with Kyogo's been the case. Yeah, I mean, Kyogo's been the amount of times he's travelled out there, or you know, even not getting selected, in fact, which we can't understand given what he brings. And I know it's a source of great frustration for Liam Carrigan, who's not a huge fan of the Japanese manager. I mean, it was nice to see him getting minutes, albeit limited. But I suppose the counterpoint to that as well, if they do, you know, 2 or all 3 of them establish themselves in that team and that squad, then we're going to have to just accept the fact that they will get called up.
Yeah. I think like now they've had those minutes, they'll definitely all be back like in good spirits. They should all, I always think with these guys when they go and they make that kind of breakthrough, we've seen it with Engels. Alistair Johnson obviously has had a great tournament, finishing in third place not too long ago, and that also getting his 50th cap and some other great stuff. But whenever we've seen, sometimes the players come back, they walk a little bit taller, their chest is out a wee bit more, they're a bit more confident. And I think all the guys that have travelled will have that little kind of pep in their step again. Not that they haven't, but it's not a total rest, especially for Engels because he's played 2 games, but it is an opportunity to kind of, reset a little bit and go back again, because the training isn't as intense. The matches are kind of, there was 2 games over 4 days or something, and then you've got 3 or 4 days either side for travel and switch over and stuff. So I think you've got everything in place. We've just obviously got that win against Leipzig. We've drew against Atalanta. We're still invincible in the league, as it were. Cup final on the horizon. So every department of the pitch, every area of the team, whatever you want to think of it as, there's no one that shouldn't be at their best right now. And no matter who he does start with and play around with over the next 3 games, you really do back the 90-minute plan, because we've seen from Rodgers in so many matches, the 90-minute plan normally works out quite well, even if it's the subs need to save us a wee bit, perhaps. But it's been a full squad effort so far, and I don't know if you rotate that much to start the Hearts game, but maybe it's a case of I think common conventional wisdom would be start the game with the best team and then triple sub at 65 minutes, kind of thing. So I think that would probably be his angle of approach into that one.
Yep. No, I think you're right. It is always a danger when you look, for me anyway, when you look to rotate a team. I always think there's certain positions that if you don't have to rotate them, you shouldn't. I always think the centre-back pairing should try and get as established as possible. For example, in our case now, we've got 3 potential contenders for 2 slots with Liam Scales, albeit Liam didn't have the best time on international duty, as I think's been spoken about on the channel. But we know what he can bring to our lineup. But I think at the moment it's looking very much like Carter Vickers, if and when fit, and Austin Trusty, who obviously came in for big money in the summer as well. The midfield, we seem to have good options. We've spoken about Callum McGregor, Rio Hatate and Engels seem to be the established first team partnership, but you've got the strength in Bernardo coming in. Luke McCown brings something slightly different there as well. Holmes seems to be kind of out the picture at this point, and there's talk of potentially signing a Lennon Miller type player, or the man himself actually, not a type player, but the actual Lennon Miller, coming in who would compete for a spot there as well. In terms of looking at January and recruitment, assuming we can get through this tough fixture list relatively unscathed, where would you like to see some key improvements in January? And should we be looking at improving the squad depth, or should we be looking at bringing in, I guess, to use the old cliche, the marquee type signing like an Arne Engels for that money?
I think I just did a video on the Celtic Here YouTube channel. We just hit 10,000 subs over there, by the way. So thanks to everyone who supports that stuff. But looking at the wingers, I think it went out last night. It might have been this morning. And I think a winger is 100% got to be the top of the shopping list right now. We don't really have winger number 3. James Forrest is kind of winger number 3, but it's kind of he's in with the furniture. He's part of the institution of the club, as it were, at this point, So he's very effective. He's very good. Also, we're happy to have him as kind of winger 4, if you like, but we don't have someone that's pushing Maeda, or could even just cover for Kuhn if the fixtures were piling up and you needed to take him out for a game, and you with ultimate confidence they could deliver over the 90 minutes. Yang, if everyone says it, he just needs minutes. He needs a loan somewhere where he can play every week. Everyone does see what he does bring, and the thing with what he's missing, he can get, but he's not going to get it without playing. Whereas with Palma, what he's missing, I don't think any of us really believe he can get it, so that's kind of the difference between those two, I think. So it's more that he's at his max. This level's too much for him playing for us, that's kind of the thing. Whereas Yang, if he could just sharpen up a bit or be a bit calmer, perhaps, or a bit, speed of mind goes up a bit, and it could change quite quickly for him. But we can't run 10 Champions League games or whatever with that being the first winger off the bench, because it's going to backfire at some point. And although Yang came off against Leipzig and looked the part, man, and he really could have maybe done something in that game and really changed all of our opinion on him, because Lewis Palma had a similar moment with his goals in the Champions League, perhaps, where doing that kind of gives you status all of a sudden. It gives you a bit of folklore instantly. But if we're spending money in January, like, there's no point in spending money on a centre back. Left back, we're all kind of jury's out on. I think who knows what's going on there. And midfield is pointless. Same as up front. We've spent all the money there, so it has to be a winger for me.
Yeah, I think this was one of the points I wanted to raise. We've spoken about Palma and Yang almost to death. I think the general consensus is that out of the two, Yang is probably closer to maybe still being able to prove that he's worthy of at least a squad place or potentially as a future there. Palma, the jury seems to be largely out, but we've seen obviously there's been a lot of exposure around. Palma's had, obviously, he's lost a very close family member, and deepest sympathies go out to him. You don't know how that's affected him. There's obviously been some confidence issues there as well, and he himself is making a bit of a statement in intent, saying he wants to push on with the club. I think my concern is that the window for both these players to really show what they can do is kind of between now and the end of the January window, because I think Brendan will not necessarily want to stick with the same squad that he has with the window open. I think, given the evident progress, particularly in Europe so far this season, and if we continue that over the course of the next month, Brendan will surely be chapping, the moneybags men, chapping their door and saying, look what we've done with the investment we had in the summer. Let's build on that. Let's not reset and have to rebuild. Let's build on top of the strong foundations that we're setting out here. And certainly, in just my opinion, when I look at players maybe like Palma, Yang, Holm, it's difficult to see them being in and around the squad if we do bring in, let's just say, higher quality or players that are better suited to our system, and certainly players that are certainly closer to the forefront of the manager's mind. So yeah, would you see this as kind of last chance saloon for those players, Palma in particular?
Yeah, I think like you take this opportunity with Palma, very good game that he won for Honduras as well, by the way, against Mexico. It was definitely an upset, very good victory for them. Mm-hmm. The manager of Mexico, I don't know if you've seen this, but he was getting pelted with like cans of beer and all that at the end of the game.
I did not see that, no.
I had blood gushing out his head on the pitch, stuff like that full time. They didn't take to the Mexico were very upset. Like, it was a proper game. It wasn't like they sent out the kids or something, it was like a proper game. So it was a great result for them. And I said on the podcast we did earlier on Celtic here, like, when you seen that goal that went viral, you're like, wow, Palma's running at somebody and they're backpedaling. Like,
we don't see it. We've not seen it. Yeah, where's that came from?
So I think you take this opportunity, the Sligo hat trick and then that kind of stuff. Maybe if somebody's watching him, there's enough there for them to go, oh, we could, he could do a job for us somewhere, like back to Greece or somewhere else. I don't know where he would go, but I think you maybe just take that opportunity and just move him on quite swiftly if possible, because and again, like, the manager does know best. If the manager does really want to stick with him, then we'll get behind him and all the rest of it, of course. But it just doesn't feel like that's possible. It feels like it's on the cards. He's probably on his way out. So if that makes it bringing another winger in easier, then cool. But I hope it doesn't become like a bottleneck situation where it's like, oh, we've got all these wingers, that we get that whole trope again. But we just pile up wingers and so we don't really have them.
And it was the same for the manager before. This was one of the manager's complaints previously. Did not make a comment about we X amount of 1,000 wingers at the club. So you don't want to get into that situation where we've so many players on the books that just aren't contributing. I think it's important we get guys can have value. Talking about outgoings, Quinn, keen to get your thoughts. I was listening intently on Tuesday, and there was a mix between the contributors about the future of one Alexandro Bernabe, who is. He's tearing it up in South America at the moment. Some people are saying, should we bring him back and give him a chance to see if he can recreate that form? Other people are saying, no, do you know what? He's never had a higher resale value, as it were, so we should take advantage of that. I've got my view on it, but I'm keen to hear what's your thoughts on the player. Do you think this is where we should be assessing players on loan to see what they can bring to the table with regular football, or is it just a case of, no, we've seen enough, great to see you doing well, bring us in some money, and you've brought value to the club in that sense?
So I'll start off by saying I don't think there's a bad move to be made. I think we're sitting in a very strong position for this one. I am of the opinion you bring him back and you give him a go, because he's undoubtedly improved. Like you can say that he suits the league better, he's closer to home, it's not as cold and all the rest of it. 1,000% he's got better. Like that's just undeniable. So that player has never been at Lennoxtown, as far as I'm concerned, so bring him back, get him under the microscope, and really, let's be honest, see the teams that are interested in him in Brazil, see if he does come back here and he's the same Bernabei, they will not be any less interested, because they'll just go, oh, well, that's because it's Scotland, and we know how good he plays in Brazil, so we'll still pay, the £8 million, $10 million, euros, whatever it is. So I don't think there's a bad move. If you do want to just cash in on all-time high Bernabei prices, if you want to think of it as proper player trading in that regard, I get it. And yeah, sure, it's very sensible, and can only just give us more ammunition to go and, actually solve the left-back problem properly, So you could get 10 million in, 13 million, 8 million, whatever it ends up being, and then spend 5 or 6 and get someone of like around that Engels kind of Kuhn level, if you really shop around, right? Because fullbacks are not as expensive as like high profile forwards or these types of guys generally. We've obviously found some guys in some depressed situations, but Engels, for example, is 13 million because he's a box to box midfielder in the Bundesliga. But fullbacks and centre backs and stuff like that depends on who they are and stuff, but they're not generally the high ticket players, so
no, of course,
that kind of thing's possible, but I would get him back.
You would get him back, so you want to take a second look at him, see what he can do. Yeah, I mean, there were a couple of games before he left on loan, before he kind of disappeared a little bit from view, where he actually was influencing games quite well. I mean, they weren't the highest profile games, but his energy level, I don't think, was ever in doubt. Positional sense it was one of these players that almost gave you everything in one game, where he would he would give you brilliant energy and fantastic, but then he'd give you the almost the Oliver Terrible sense of positioning, where he was just nowhere to be found. And at times I would watch him and I couldn't figure out what position he actually thought he was playing, but it wasn't left back, so more definitely. Yeah. It was definitely one of the more erratic, but to an extent, quite an exciting player to watch at times. But I think I get the view that, we send players out on loan. The idea is not only for them to get minutes, but it's also to evaluate what they can do in a team where they are getting played regular, and maybe allows them to show attributes that are not getting the opportunity to do in our club. For me, I'm not 100% sure he'd be the player I would pinpoint as solving that left back problem, as you mentioned. I mean, we've got an established player in Greg Taylor. No idea if we're going to be able to retain him past this season. Valle, I've no idea what the situation is there. I'm hearing conflicting reports that Barcelona need him back. In other senses, that they're happy for him to continue to develop here, but then we might not have the opportunity to sign him. So should we continue investing in his development at the moment? Is there enough return on investment for us? So as a problem position, and it seems to have been a problem position for years now, since Kieran Tierney left. I saw there was an update on his status at Arsenal. It wasn't too clear. Would you see any place for someone like Kieran Tierney to come back, or do you think that ship has sailed and we should be looking at maybe bringing some new talent in that position?
Well, I think the thing with left back is it's one of these stories that's just not went away. Really, it feels like for about 2 or 3 years or something like that.
Absolutely.
To do a somewhat other shameless plug, I did a full kind of left back thing on Celtic here in the last international break, and very good video. I hope anyone who watches it enjoys it, of course. But I think really all roads lead back to Andy Robertson for me when it comes to left back. Like that's just the best thing to possibly be available to and to be open to. And I don't think you get Tierney and Robertson at the club at the same time. I just don't think that's possible. So I'm just, at that point, I just can't get on board with ever bringing Tierney in unless it's like the 3-month loan to see the season out or that kind of thing,
Yeah, maybe come and do a job,
Yeah, and I'd say you can check out the video for all the kind of Robertson vibes that I was giving out and all the rest of it. But I think even the Bernabei stuff, I'm talking kind of worst case scenario, really, just in a realistic world. But see if you flip it on its head and you do best case scenario, imagine he plays 1 or 2 games in the Champions League pretty well. He is very close, in a lot of people's opinions, to international call-ups, and we've been speaking about that already with other players. If we got him into the Argentina team, how much could we sell him for, and to who?
You've got to look at it that way.
Somebody like him, So the downside, I don't think the Brazilian interest goes away if you take him back, and the upside is you could have anyone interested in him if it works out.
Fair enough. That's an interesting viewpoint. Okay, it'll be interesting to watch how that one develops and see how he figures into the manager's plans, if at all. But yeah, I think as you say, it's not a hard problem to or a bad problem to have. It's a good problem, I think, for a manager to have. Awesome, cool. Now you mentioned you figure we're fine up top. We've obviously got Kyogo, who seems to be our first choice established striker. We've got Ida, who came in for big money and is showing and certainly flashes what we saw last season, and continuing to develop. And I think European football exposure will only continue that. Is that enough for you at the moment up top, or would you like to see someone brought in to cover, or are you in the Maeda camp, where Maeda is the natural replacement for Kyogo in that case?
We've been getting some reports that Cummings is getting first team training now, so
yes,
so we might see some internal development on that front, which I think, again, similar to I was talking about Robertson, just leave that door open. I think you always want to leave the door open for striker free being homegrown, being academy, and if they're not, then they're not good enough. You get somebody like Owen at some point, and that's fine. But I think there's a space there for him. I think he's probably in audition time between now and the January window opening. And if there is somebody that we could maybe nip in a similar kind of vein to Odin Thiago home, maybe where it's like a guy in a lesser league that has 6 months left in their contract, we can get them for a couple of quid and a sell-on clause or whatever. Then maybe that sort of thing comes on the menu for January. In terms of kind of front players, and again, he could probably fill in to being third forward if you really needed him to be. It's not the best signing we could make in a lot of different metrics, right? And all the rest of it. But I'm a bit of a football romantic at times and all the rest of it. I already mentioned Robertson. And I posted this on X or whatever you want to call it, not when it kind of was announced, but Johnny Russell's a free agent. And Johnny Russell for 6 months, for 3 months or whatever for the back end of the season, being a Forest type guy off the bench, or maybe to just replace Palma off the bench, perhaps, is just that guy that can't really run but can shoot and stuff. I'd much rather have Johnny Russell in the squad maybe than a Palma, if you get me. So I think there's a lot of interesting options. It depends on how you want to really look at it. But the Cummins one, I think, is the one we would probably have our fingers crossed the most. Johnny Russell's more of a wide forward, a winger these days. Obviously, he's old, but if you needed him, if Ida was out and Kyogo was busted, that's all. But just a wee one for me. Johnny Russell on the hoops would be cool. You know what I mean? Johnny Russell would score some good goals for us. No two ways about it. He would love the derbies as well.
Listen, if you listen to Gordon Strachan, he talks about John Hartson saying, John Hartson had a movement ratio of about a metre in either direction, and look at the goals he scored. I think that's a bit unfair on Big John. To be fair, I thought he was a fantastic player and a great goal scorer. But movement is not the be all and end all when it comes to scoring goals. It's about putting the ball in the back of the net. But interesting one. So we're keen to see what some of the commenters make on that. But I think it would be nice to see us give opportunities to a player like Cummings. Paul John's been extolling his virtues for seems like all year, as someone who really knows where the back of the net is. And I think that fundamentally that's what you need from a striker, is that sharpness and that ability to find the goal. So a few people are in the comments I can see are saying get him on the bench for the remainder of the league, give him some exposure to the first team. We've seen evidence of it with young Turley at times as well. But I think if you've got what I would consider an out-and-out goal scorer and a player like Cummings, then it can only help his development if we get him in and around. And as you say, if we get that opportunity to go a few goals up in a game, or if we are hit with injuries, bring him on, give the kid a chance. How do players get the opportunity? They have to take it when it presents itself. So I would like to see that as well, and really start to see us bring through some homegrown, club weird players to make a meaningful contribution to the first team. Excellent, good stuff.
I was going to say as well, there was reports today came out that we've been linked to Josh Brownhill at Burnley, and he's a 29-year-old midfielder. So there is maybe some space in the squad for an older player. Perhaps now 29 isn't the same as Johnny Russell at 34 or whatever, right? It is just a wee kind of flight of fancy I had with it. It's well, he's free, a couple of months. He probably wouldn't want that much money, really. And he's probably going to end up back at Dundee United or something anyway. So, it's just a wee kind of pit stop. But
I think we saw it with Moy, and we've seen it with some players in the past. I mean, Lubo, everybody goes back to Lubo, right? Lubo we're probably never going to get another Lubo Moravcik, right? But when he came in, the derision about his age and his profile, and 2 goals later, and everybody's thinking, who is this guy? This is amazing, and what a player he turned out to be in. It was one of my privileges to see him play live. Within that Martin O'Neill team, along with Larson and various others. So age shouldn't really be a barrier either from a youth standpoint or even as you get into the twilight years, if the ability is still there. One of my biggest missed opportunities, and I was gutted that it didn't happen, but I remember we were tentatively linked, and I think it was when Lennon was in charge on his first stint as manager, to Del Piero. And Del Piero was, outside of Celtic, Del Piero was my absolute favourite player for years, right through the 90s. And my greatest ambition was to see Del Piero and Larson in the same team. Never obviously got to see it. Saw them playing against each other at a game at Celtic Park when it was Celtic Juve that where they both scored. But the opportunity, I thought, even in his early mid-30s, to bring Del Piero in, I thought, wow, just to see him in the hoops, just get him on to take the free kicks or the corners, or just play in that number 10 hole, and I thought he could do it. So we shouldn't rule out players based on age. It's actually more about what can they come in and do in this system and this team. And I think players, the most recent example, probably Aaron Moy is one that's a key example. And of course Kasper Schmeichel. I know goalkeepers are a little bit different, but age certainly doesn't seem to have dulled his ability too much at the moment. He's playing absolutely phenomenally.
Yeah.
So going on then to moving into the Champions League. We've had some cracking results. We've had that horrendous result against Dortmund. We've got a couple of big games coming up, including the one that we're going to be covering at Barazat and Design. What are you expecting from our Champions League campaign now? Do we have enough belief, given our momentum, that we can go on the front foot against the remaining teams? Or when it comes to the point where we come up against Villa, for example, do we go back to kind of Atalanta, park the bus to an extent, and try and absorb it? How do you see the next the remainder of the campaign going?
I definitely don't think we're short on optimism at this point. I think we're all very optimistic and quite proud of the team, and very hopeful for how far they can go. But I really do think, like, Leipzig and Atalanta, huge tests, huge pass marks. But Bruges, this next game is just as big in so many ways, because we've all kind of been there to some extent. Old format, times changed and all the rest of it, where it's like you need good results on top of good results. And we've got 2 in a row right now, but dropping points now against Bruges would undermine a little bit of the points gained against the bigger teams.
It's a danger, isn't it? It's a danger.
Cannot be taken for granted. The season before last, they qualified out the group, a very tough group they were in as well. They were not favourites for that at all. They were favourites to finish bottom, if anything. And, I think they'll be up for it. I don't think they'll be thinking, they'll be giving us as much respect as you would expect them to. Quite rightly, of course. Also coming to our place, it's going to be a tough night for them. But it's definitely it's not Bratislava. It's not anywhere near Bratislava. This is much closer to our usual. The old format, that team where it's like, right, if we beat them, we're getting third. It's that kind of game. We're into. Where it's like, can't take them for granted, get the job done night. That's what we need for them. So I think that really does dictate a lot for how crazy hopeful you could get, because if you do get job done on Bruges, I do think being optimistic for Zagreb young boys is just very, very, very justified then at that point. Not saying that the Leipzig and Atalanta stuff doesn't give you that already, of course, but you don't want to give away ground gained at this stage.
Absolutely. And we're hoping that, I think we seem to have lost some of that European naivety that we've had in previous years. Even under, prior to Brendan coming back and Ange, we took the gung-ho approach, and it was great to watch at times. And against Real Madrid, we looked, we scored a fabulous goal through Jota, but you could see that this wasn't necessarily the best tactical approach to take. As much as, you talk about football romanticism, going on the front foot, playing the Celtic way, playing, full attack and trying to defend from the front, as it were. But I thought Atalanta in particular, it just seemed to be a mature performance from this team. It just felt as though, we got everything right on the park. And maybe there was no difference in instructions between the Dortmund game and the Atalanta game, but the players approached it differently, I think. Manager might have approached it the same way, and he claims he did, but for me, the players approached it completely differently. There was a more simplistic style of play to them. They weren't trying to do a lot of the Maverick stuff. It was all about hard work and, running down and deep pressing. I thought that was fantastic. And I think, we now that we've had some good results and we've actually had a couple of wins, I think it's so important that we don't sacrifice those hard-working ethics and principles and doing things simple in the upcoming games. So there's going to be a lot of work to do on the park. And I think it will still be, as to use the Jim Moore test, it will still be a behind the sofa occasion at points. But on the counterpoint, though, if we do get through that game, if we get through the Bruges game and we get through it either with a hard-won draw or even the best case scenario we get a good victory against them, that should propel us on in terms of belief, right? I mean, that should be the case of saying, you know what, we belong here. These wasn't a couple of flukes. We are actually able to compete at this level. So then maybe it gives you that opportunity to be a little bit more gung ho and have that sense of belief, and hopefully players will feel that as well. So looking forward to it. Looking forward to that happening. But before that happens, we've got the game at Tynecastle on Saturday. So Quinny, I'm going to ask you for your anticipated lineup for the Hearts match, and then I'm going to ask for your prediction. So how do you think we'll set up and play, and what do you think your prediction will be?
I think it will be Trusty and Vickers that will start centre back. Of course, Alistair Johnson will pick himself. I think the left back's the only one I cannot really make a proper gauge on, because I did think Taylor was given some preferential kind of minutes, as it were, when they were both available right before that international break. But there is definitely logic to say that playing the Kelly game is more of a horses for courses decision rather than the manager deciding that was the best defence period kind of thing. And we did see Valle in the semi-final. So the left back one really is 50-50 as it gets for me, I think, until we get somebody in a press conference asking him, outright. McGregor will start, of course. I think between Engels and Hatate, it's hard to say that they won't start, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if one of them didn't, just down to, jet lag, fatigue, minute management ahead of Bruges, and then the following weekend from there on, perhaps. So somebody like a McKeown or a Bernardo could start, but I've got a feeling he probably does start best midfield, and it's McGregor, Engels, Hatate. And again, then logically, I find it really hard to definitely say that all three Japanese players start after, but Dyson doesn't get rested or rotated for anything, really, to be honest.
He's probably swam back, right? I mean, let's be honest, he's probably never didn't even bother using the plane. Yeah.
And Kyogo loves playing against Hearts. He does brilliant, but Ida gets preferred in away games, it feels like sometimes. So there's a few kind of mild question marks, but I think ultimately it will come down to the most predictable best 11 with an absolute 50-50 at left back.
Nice. I like it. Yep. And what's your prediction in terms of score? What do you think?
I've settled on 3-1. I think
3-1.
They'll get something in the game somehow. It's not going to be. It's going to be a great game. I know the travel for whoever's going there will be a nightmare, and it's not a very hospitable venue for jungle gyms. But it'll be a good one to watch on the telly. It should be a good atmosphere, and on the pitch, it'll probably be very active. It'll be fireworks.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's always a hostile atmosphere, and it's one where you need the players to show that kind of mental strength and that mental resilience. It was one, actually, going back to a point we spoke about earlier, where Yang, I think, he was really caught out, or we believe he was really caught out by the atmosphere, and his confidence kind of crumbled in that match. So you do need your strong and established players to show that mental resilience and ignore the hostile atmosphere, which, to be fair, we've shown that we can do all season. I wouldn't disagree too much with your lineup there. I think the Valle versus Taylor question is an interesting one, because it felt to me that Valle was not only impressing us as fans and reporting on this channel, but he seemed to have the favour of the manager. Was starting every week, and for me, certainly, I felt he was performing well. He certainly wasn't performing badly. He was performing pretty well and looked solid there. And as a player who I think can contribute quite well in terms of going on the attack as well. I mean, he got in there very early on in his tenure and got a few assists. And he looks like he likes a shot from distance. Taylor, huge part of our success up to this point. You cannot knock what he's brought to the team and the squad, and he seemed to come back in. As you say, him coming back in, was it just to get minutes in the legs? Was it because of the type of fixture we had? Or is he very much just the established number one, and it's up to Valle to try and oust him? So it'll be interesting to see how he goes there. I think great to have options like McKeown and Bernardo on the bench. I would suggest if Hatate is fit, given how he was playing prior to the international break, And if you want someone to try and unlock a defence with some of those Hollywood passes that he's kind of famous for, I would probably start with Hatate, Engels, and Callum McGregor. What I wanted to mention actually was McGregor. How nice is it to come out of an international break and he'll be the freshest player on the on the park, which would be nice. So I mean, we always. Certainly, I do it, and I know a lot of people have mentioned it in comments previously. Callum McGregor, he's a player that just doesn't seem to get benched. He's not a player that gets substituted too often, and we rely on him so heavily that you almost worry, are we not protecting the player enough? But now that he is retired from international football, it's a huge loss for Scotland. We'll certainly acknowledge that. But I think, we will hopefully reap the benefits in periods like this where, we've had no domestic football for a couple of weeks and he'll be coming back in nice and fresh. So a fully fit, fully firing Callum McGregor could be a real difference maker in the match. How important will he be, not just in this match, Quinny, but actually going forward over the next few months?
Definitely felt the benefit of him not travelling for international duty already this season, especially there's been 3 blooming windows already, and he's not had to go away for any one of them. But I just wanted to check something real quickly, and I know he scored a bunch of goals this year. Only one of them came at home, and that was the derby. So every goal he scored this year has been away from home. So I think this could be a great game for McGregor. He's had that 2 weeks off. They were in Dubai training with O'Reilly as well, weren't they? Football friends, doing all that. So I think McGregor could have a stormer of a game. He'll play the 90 minutes. He's been scoring away from home quite well. This is a game you need your you don't need, but you'll see the captain probably step up.
Yeah, absolutely.
McGregor's a great shout for a big performance in this one.
Fantastic. Awesome. Well, other than that, I think pretty much agree on lineup. Looking forward to seeing if Kuhn can continue his momentum. In terms of prediction, I'll go for 3-0. I don't think Hearts will get a goal. Big Casper's on great form. And I think our defence is looking apart at the moment, but you never know. Just want to say thanks to everybody that's tuned in. We're around about 1,000 viewers, so really appreciate everyone's support. Thanks everyone who commented. As you can tell, I'm a little bit hesitant to comment because I'm getting accused of banning people left, right, and centre. One time, guys. One time. Well, twice maybe. But either way, I haven't done it since. So, but thank you everyone that contributed and watched. This has been a Celtic State of Mind. Just left for me to say thank you, Quinny. Really appreciate you coming on and joining me today, and looking forward to catching up in person on the 10th of December for the Champions League game. Guys, thanks very much. Enjoy the game on Saturday if we don't see you before then. But this has been myself, Chris McElwain, Quinny, Double Denim and Bumblebee. What are we called? What was the one we had? The honeys, the honeybees. Yeah, so we'll take that one. We'll take that one. Thanks everyone for watching a Celtic State of Mind. Hail, hail.
Hail, hail.